Hello and welcome to Podtoid. We are your host. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 424. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very good show for you in store. Just like last week, we're going to continue talking about the new duo of Pokemon games now that both Dan and I have beat the main story and have reached the post-game. Got a lot to say about that. We're also going to be talking about the Game Awards and the new Half-Life game Valve dropped on us this week. So that was pretty unexpected, but exciting. So unfortunately, we're going to have to do all that without Charlotte. She is feeling a bit under this week, and we wish her the best. But the show must go on. So how was everyone else doing this week?
Pretty good. I just watched some television for the first time in a long time because I didn't even realize television was still going. But is that what television is now? Like, it was so fast. It was fast and it was full of sound effects, and it was just like, take a breath. Like, I guess that's just the way you shoot TV in a world where everyone's kind of grown up on YouTube. I guess that's like, but it was too fast for my old eyes. I felt like I kind of needed to record it on my Betamax video recorder and then play it back at like half speed. It was like everything, it couldn't stay on a shot for more than 2 seconds, and when anyone was talking they weren't allowed to say more than 6 words before it moved to somebody else, and I was just like, I guess this is basically the idea of like, if you stop on something for more than 10 seconds people are going to change the channel. So this is just how we shoot television now.
It's the Michael Bay way.
Yeah. Apparently.
Editing over the past 10 years has gotten really sporadic, and I kind of hate it.
I've always thought that editing has started to take more after professional wrestling, because that's what I noticed back in the 90s is that in WWE back then, they would not stay on a shot for longer than about 3 or 4 seconds unless they were moving around cameras.
CJ, wrestling like today is dizzying in terms of how it's shot. Well, mainly just in like WWE.
Just WWE,
Yeah, the way it's shot is fucking like vomit inducing in terms of speed and inability to like, it's just cut camera 1 camera 4 camera 1 camera 4 camera, like, and you watch it and you just like, I've got a friend who doesn't really watch wrestling. We watched one match from recently, like not too long ago, and he suffers from quite bad motion sickness, and there were times where he had to look away from the screen because he was getting like queasy with the way his eyes were constantly being drawn to stuff every like second and a half. And I guess that's the way you make television now, in like when people don't want to watch a video that's like 4 minutes long because it's too long. I guess if TV wants to stay relevant, it feels everything has to be like a fucking TV commercial. I don't know.
To be fair, to WWE's credit, it is a live show, so they're like actively editing and shooting this thing live on the spot, and I guess they want to try and get more angles in there, but man, it's just...
Yeah, but guess what? They've been doing that for 30 years. So
yeah, it's hard,
it wasn't always this terrible.
They haven't perfected it in any way.
So that's how I've been. I've been watching some television and feeling old.
My mom gets motion sickness from watching stuff as well. So I remember when I was a child and we were watching whatever pay-per-view we were watching as a family, she would just close her eyes because just the fast-paced motion of all the cuts and shit would just not cooperate with her. She does the same thing when we go to the movies, and it's that the opening for the movie theater where it's like a roller coaster and there's popcorn popping around and soda being poured. Like, she can't stand that either.
So I get to take it she's not a big fan of Hardcore Henry. No, that movie doesn't work out for her.
I should show her that and just see it send her into a stroke or something.
She's a fan of a different kind of Hardcore Henry.
Hey, that's my mom.
Yeah, and your mother is a sexual being, and that's okay.
Now I'm sad. I'm going to cancel the show.
Now I'm sad and I want to cancel the show.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat now. This is...
Guys, we all came from our dad's nutsacks, so it's okay. Just acknowledge that. Probably from behind.
Aww.
Yeah, there you go. Happy podcast.
There's, I've heard that the worst thing you can see is walking in on your parents, but I think just like having that thought put into your mind, because I don't believe my parents would ever do anything as adventurous as that. They're very, very white. That's I think far worse, because my imagination will do far worse things than what seeing it would do.
No, it's like the beginning of Jaws,
Yes. Yeah.
but it's your dad popping off on your mom.
What the fuck is this episode?
I love this idea. I also love this idea that, like, to everyone, your parents have never had a day's fun in their life. They were born old. They were born in like a tweed jacket with leather patches on the elbows, smoking a pipe. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was never a day when your parents were just like excitable and had fun and did crazy things and got arrested. It was just like, nah, they were always 50. You know what I mean?
My parents were born old, sitting on the couch watching reruns of NCIS. That's what I want to imagine. That's exactly how they were born.
You know, it's one of the greatest joys of my life as I've gotten older is to get to know my parents not as mom and dad, but as the people they are or were and are. It's a real beautiful thing to hear about your father, his exploits in college of drinking and hanging out with his friends and laughing and just imagining, like, especially when you realize, okay, well, I'm this age, and when my dad was my age, he was doing this and that, and sort of you wonder, would you be friends with him? Or would you be friends with your mom? Would you have sex with your mom, as in Back to the Future style?
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah. There it is.
So,
and there it is.
Like, I remember the first time after I turned 21 that I went drinking with my parents. Like, we went to a Mexican restaurant and just had a bunch of margaritas. And this is when I found out that my dad, when he was in high school, moved in with his teacher who he was having sex with. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing. Why didn't I know this sooner? This makes me like you more. This is awesome. Yeah.
Wait, real quick.
Yeah.
Let's back up for just a second.
Uh-huh.
Can you elaborate on that? Like, another thing, I'm not looking for salacious details. That seems like a real, like, nonchalant way to drop. He moved in with the teacher he was banging in high school?
Yes, in the 70s, apparently.
Yeah.
He was having sex. I don't know which teacher it was, but he was having sex with one of his teachers. And it's really weird because I've seen pictures of my dad in high school, and he was a goob. But he's having sex with her, and so his parents kicked him out, and he moved in with her for, I think, the second half of the school year until he graduated. Yeah.
That is amazing. That is like just. I love how nonchalantly you just mentioned that too.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm with you. I'm kind of stunned. I'm just like, but I guess the point you're making, CJ, is that's why they should take a more like a softer approach to the editing of WWE pay-per-views.
Yeah, exactly.
That is exactly it.
Yeah, because I like to bring things back to a circle. I think it's tight that way. So, yeah.
I can understand the surprise of that story, because usually when you talk about a teacher sleeping with a student, it ends in a court case and jail time. But no, not in this case.
Not in the 70s. Did your dad have a mustache in high school?
This is actually a really important detail that I need to know as well.
Okay, I know he had a mustache in his early 20s, but I don't think I've seen a picture of him in his senior year. The picture I saw of him was like his sophomore year, and again, goob. But he has had mustache for long periods of his life. So he might have had one in high school when he was railing his teacher.
I'm painting a picture. I needed that detail. Thank you.
It was the 70s. Everyone had a mustache.
That is so true.
Like how everyone has a beard now.
As above, so below, right?
Okay, before we get talking about games, I just want to share the story out of Canada, which is up in Dan's neck of the woods. And it has to do with typos. We're all familiar with typos. I make them myself. I'm either writing a story too fast or I don't have time to revise it. And if you'd like to see an example of this, just find the original version of my Pokemon Sword review. Just this week, I spelled imminent as an imminent domain imminent danger as eminent, be it eminent domain, and my boss just looked at me. But the good news is that when you work for a website, you can always fix typos. same can't be said when you publish a newspaper. And this one newspaper in Courtenay, British Columbia had kind of a big one this week. As you know, it is the holiday season, and Christmas displays are going up at stores, and people are starting to get their picture taken with Santa. Except at the Courtenay Christmas Fair, where it was announced another mythical creature would be taking pictures with kids.
Who could it be? Who could it be? I just can't imagine who. Could it be Satan?
Yes, that's right, Satan. Bring your kids to the Courtenay Christmas Fair and get their picture with Satan. It's the new holiday tradition for the entire Goth family. If you want your picture with Satan, be sure to head down to the Native Sons Hall starting at 11:15 a.m. on December 1st and be prepared to sell your soul for that new mountain bike you want from Satan.
That's like a fucking Christmas village that's managed by Occams.
Hell yeah. But yeah, I'm on my way. Sign me up.
Managed by Satan. I love it.
I really think that they should really lean into this, or that this should be like one of those Hallmark Christmas movies where they accidentally type Satan in and the town is outraged, but it brings in thousands of outside people to this small and obviously white community who are all in on the joke. So the mayor dresses up as Satan, and then there are hijinks and shenanigans, and it ends with him getting a kiss from a 90s child actor who in this film plays a gingerbread bakery owner that sells gingerbread men all year round and is somehow still in business.
CJ,
I really thought this out.
Yeah, can you stop using this fucking podcast to just like pitch those scripts that you write? Like,
this is going to be Hallmark Toyd before the end of the year. God damn it.
Dude, I am so down with that. Like, we already started watching the movies.
Oh,
They're great. They're so good.
A Satan for Christmas. That's what it'd be called. Because it's always an X for Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you just fill in the X with whatever the fucking story. A family, a wife. I was going to say something then, but I didn't have the balls to. Never mind.
an abortion for Christmas? Yes.
Yeah.
I want to see an abortion for Christmas.
The movie is the Satan thing, but then the last like 3 minutes of the movie is like whenever in Event Horizon they showed what hell looked like. It's just that. We just full on nudity and violence. You just babies getting their head popped off, fucking dogs being fucked to death. Just go for it. And then the movie ends, but with that really cheery music they always play.
So in this Hallmark movie, who plays Satan? Is it like Elizabeth Berkley or someone like that? Not necessarily. That's just a name that I pulled out. That's not necessarily because I think she has the qualities of the satanic. It's just like she's the first Hallmark actor that popped into my head.
Is Elizabeth Berkley a Hallmark actor?
Well, I've seen her in a Christmas film that was on one of those Christmas channels. So.
I keep going back to Brandon Ruth, but I don't know.
She was in a film where it's Christmas and she wins the lottery, but she leaves her winning lottery ticket in her car, and then her car's stolen by a good-looking, rugged car thief, and so she has to get the car back because the car's got the lottery ticket in. But I think she ends up like shacking up with the car thief for like Christmas as well. I think something like that.
And she gets fucked in a pool.
Yeah, it's the same. It's that movie, and then
it just turns into Showgirls.
Yeah, and then Gina Gershon, like, she pushes her down a flight of stairs, and then Zach Morris calls a timeout, and I might be mixing up several of her projects here. I don't know.
There's got to be somebody from Ally McBeal they could put on there.
I was thinking Candace Cameron Bure because she does at least 35 of these every year.
Well, ever since and Aunt Becky decided to rig the thing for her kid, yeah. She's the mascot.
Although maybe because she's super religious like her brother, she wouldn't play.
I know, and that bums me out so much. I mean, her brother's a piece of shit, but at least she's a little more low key about it. I can appreciate that.
Danica McKellar. No, is it Danica McKellar?
McKellar.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
She'd do it.
What? Shut up. You were gay. What are you doing?
I can still appreciate it. I can look at the window if I don't buy anything.
But this is. I always remember a couple of months ago. Was it a couple of months ago? Where on this show you said something like, a girl all the guys fancy, like Pamela Anderson or something like that.
I literally couldn't think of a current hot woman.
I know. It's just her and Kathy Ireland. Oof.
That hot chick everyone's talking about today, Iman. Oh yeah, everyone loves talking about her.
Jesus.
Let's go ahead and move on. And Occams, we're gonna start with you in this. I assume it's a movie called Ring of Steel.
Yeah. It's let me bring up the description of it because I can ramble on about these things and want to get it right. Okay, so yeah, I did game wise. I beat Outer Worlds. Go play it. It's great. But I watched Ring of Steel. Guys, holy shit. Okay. The Ring of Steel is a bizarre nightclub where nightly gladiatorial contests are held. The patrons are the rich and decadent, people who have become bored with the usual sports lineup and developed a taste for blood. An Olympic fencer, banned from the sport after accidentally killing a man, is entreated with wine, women, and song.
I'm just
Can I
thinking.
finish?
Yes, go
Can I
ahead.
finish?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is entreated with wine, women, and song into participating in the nightly combat. Once he discovers that there's something truly sinister afoot, it's too late for him to back out, especially since his girlfriend is being held as an insurance policy. Joe Don Baker, Carol Alt, and Robert Chapin star in this R-rated bone cruncher. I absolutely take issue with the word bone cruncher in that description, Rotten Tomatoes. And the movie was just it's blood sport with somehow more feathered mullets and sword fighting. And the fencer is holy shit. The fencer is great. It's a ridiculous dumb fuckery of a movie, and I loved every second of it. It's got all the great '90s like action movie tropes. There is the love interest, just full frontal nudity and like those like perfect fake '90s tits in the first like 12 minutes of the movie. Like it's established they know each other, and the next scene it's like a saxophone solo while she like very slowly writhes on top of him. It's just the fights are actually the fights weren't bad. There was the guy who the fencing guy was actually like like actiony not stunt person, like knew what he was doing, fighting kind of thing, and it shows in some of the fights. There was also just random like ninjas fighting that had nothing to do with the movie whatsoever. They just had a fight scene. These two ninjas fought each other, and they didn't get names. They were ninja in the cast as well, which I thought was nice. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's fun. It's on YouTube for free, so go watch it.
I love that there are ninjas because it's the '90s and there has to be ninjas somewhere in this
100%.
movie.
Yeah, all of like the main people in the movie are white men as God intended, and the only any sort of like ethnic flair for the fighting is just ninjas, and and the bad guy is just a dick. He's just like an asshole in the way those like 90 movies, like what was his name? Lucas? Was that his name from The Wizard? The kid, the Power Glove kid?
Josh Lucas?
No. I'm trying to think of the character, whatever the character's name was, but this Power Glove's rad. Imagine that kid. Now give him like 10 years on him. He's definitely a rapist, and he's super into killing people, and like that's the bad guy of the movie. And they're all oiled up for no reason. Oh, it's so good. It's great.
Well, it's a gladiatorial, so
yeah, right.
They gotta oil them up like they did in the old days, they assume.
Yeah, and Joe Don Baker kind of like sleepily works his way through this film, and it's just it's good. It's real good, folks.
Now I gotta ask: when the fencer killed that person, was it as part of a fencing competition?
It was like he was in the like some kind of Olympic trial tournament thing, and he was fencing. Which, and by the way, fencing is like, I mean, I would do it for 30 seconds and probably shit myself from exhaustion, and I know it's really intense, but trying to make fencing look hardcore is impossible. It really is, because it's part ballet, and it's like the whole time you're just like, some Street Fighter is cooler than this. It's really, really not an impressive thing to look at. It's like a hardcore sport. But essentially when they have the gear on, they look like a mime kind of thing with a mask on, and he goes like to like block the dude's foil or whatever. And his like his sword, the epee or whatever it's called, breaks, and like a piece of it just flies into the dude's head. And it's like, it's so great. And it does this thing where like all of a sudden everyone is like, he's like blacklisted. Like he did it on purpose. It was great.
I got to clear my name. So I'm going to go take part in these gladiatorial contests. And he was like, girlfriend's kidnapped.
Oh, she was kidnapped, and he was kind of okay with it. Like he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna fight. And by kidnapped, she was like held in the upstairs room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a '90s kidnapping where.
Oh yeah.
She still has 90s. Like access to a bunch of drinks and drugs up there, and.
Oh yeah, she's like hanging out in a penthouse eating Chinese food. That's actually what she's doing.
Oh, that's brilliant! I love that. And you said it's on YouTube.
Yeah, Ring of Steel full movie. It's up on YouTube. I find a lot of these films, blessedly, are just sitting on YouTube. It's they were never released on DVD, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So it's a VHS rip, but it's still pretty good quality. And one of my favorite things is they did multiple posters for the movie, and there's like hardcore like dude poster, and then there's a poster that makes it definitely look like a gay porn, where it's just shirtless dudes like within kissing distance of each other holding swords, and they're oiled up. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, they're going to fuck. I get it, yeah.
All right, moving on. Dan, you and I have been playing some Pokemon for the past 2 weeks. Have we not?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I published my review, I think, on Wednesday. Definitely Wednesday, because that's the day I went down south here. And I ended up scoring it a 7. Ultimately coming to that it's an enjoyable game, if not entirely an ambitious one, with a horribly broken online mode that is a step back in direction, or step back from the series in every possible way. You took a different route. You spent a lot of time in the wild area. Why did you do that?
I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed the minutia of just catching Pokemon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was enjoyable because early on in the wild area, when you only have like a couple of badges, you don't run into like the 5-star raids or anything like that. It's mostly just like 3 or 2-star ones.
Yeah.
Those are fine. You could do those with the NPC trainers, no problem. And I was getting like a lot of neat Pokemon really early on. Like by the time I was, fighting the champion, I had like nearly 300 Pokemon registered in the Pokédex. So I was pretty much set.
Yeah.
What I wasn't prepared for was how the wild area just fucking ramps up in difficulty in terms of the raids in the post game. Because those 5-star raids with those crappy NPC trainers are nearly impossible at times.
Yeah. So one thing that I think I don't think I made clear in my review was that when you do the raids, like the 1 to 3-star reviews, you can absolutely one-hit kill a Dynamaxed Pokemon. It's possible.
Yeah.
When you do the 4 and 5, then they become what's the word I'm looking for here? The matches become a little bit more choreographed. That you will, if you could get a giant hit, a great hit on them, you have type advantage. It'll only take it down about a third, at which point the Pokemon will throw up a shield, and you have to deplete that shield before you can do more damage to it. And
yeah.
And like you said, like you said, when you are working with the NPCs instead of other players, it becomes almost an insurmountable challenge to beat them and catch them.
They throw up a shield twice.
Yeah.
It's insufferable.
Yeah.
And if you don't Dynamax at the very start of the match, you gotta let it charge up afterwards, and it's not even worth it then. So either you do it and you tear down that shield, and then you're just back to your normal form right after, or you wait, but then you have to wait a whole ton, and then they throw up a shield at the end anyways, and you waste your Dynamax on that shield. I want to stream.
Yeah, and my favorite thing is like when I'm playing and let's say I don't have my Dynamax available at the beginning, there's a little message saying that NPC player B can Dynamax now, and then they don't.
And they never do. Yeah, they never do.
But it becomes such a problem because it's not even that they're bringing in the NPCs are bringing in Pokemon that are neutral to the one that you're fighting. You're pretty much guaranteed to get at least one who brings in a Pokemon that is at a type disadvantage with the one that you are fighting. If you're fighting a fire one, they're going to bring in a grass one. If you're fighting an electric one, they're going to bring in a flying one. It is just so fucking frustrating that knowing how difficult it is without other people already, that the game decides to even stack on that difficulty by having you team up with someone who throws in a fucking Magikarp or something. It is just endlessly frustrating. And because this is the bulk of the post game, it's not making me want to return to the game all that much.
Yeah, it really soured it. It really soured the game for me, unfortunately. And even if you want to invite people, good fucking luck, because the system sucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you gotta pay for it too. This is part of Nintendo's online service, and it still hasn't justified itself in any way to me so far.
And it's insane to me that Nintendo's quality of online play can be so up and down. Like, you have Super Mario Maker 2, which is just a stuttery mess when you are playing with other people online. And then you have Luigi's Mansion 3, which is perfect online.
Yeah.
And then going to this is another jumbled mess of bad ideas and bad execution.
Supposedly, millions of people bought this game, but I have yet to find where I invite random people to my raid where it fills up completely. I'll maybe get like 1 or 2 people, and that'll be that.
And I've had it where I find a Gigantamax Pokemon, and you can see from the silhouette that you know that's what you're fighting. Yeah, that's
going to be a special, yeah.
And no one joins.
It's infuriating. I had that exact moment, and I spent like 40 minutes like customizing my team, like, all right, I'm going to use this Pokemon instead, like just trying my damnedest, using whatever Pokemon I could, hoping that the NPC trainers then would send out something bearable, and they never did, and I gave up.
And Chris and Occams, I don't. You guys haven't played this game. I know, Chris, you haven't, but Occams, you haven't played it, have you?
No.
No. Just I want to give you to walk you through what it's like to try and team up with someone. So you find one of these dens in the wild area. They're glowing red. And you see the silhouette of what it is, and then you go to invite other players, and then you just have to sit there for 3 minutes and hope one of them shows up. And if no one does, either you tackle it with the NPCs or it completely kicks you out of the online back to the wild area, and you have to start from scratch again. It is... Ugh. I don't know who thought of this idea, and more importantly, I don't know why the producers thought it was acceptable, but it isn't. And it sucks. Because most of the rest of the game is fine. You know, it's not wildly ambitious. It's not going to be as memorable as Sun and Moon, X and Y, or Black and White 2. But this online just completely ruins what should be just an okay, enjoyable experience.
So let me pitch joining a raid now to both Occams and Chris here. So do you guys like Twitter? Do you like scrolling through a feed? So imagine this. Imagine if you're trying to find a raid to join. Like, people won't join my raid. Maybe I'll just join someone else's. Well, now you gotta scroll through a feed of, like, random people in the wild area, what they're catching, maybe they're trading. And if you see something in that feed that lets you join a raid, then you could try and join it. But chances are it'll boot you out anyways because they've been waiting already too long. But the feed didn't update that yet. It'll still stay there, even if the raid is, like, long gone and dead already. Which is really annoying.
Is this just generally how raids work in most games that have got raids?
Nah, normally, like, in any proper, I should say, any RPG with, like, any common sense, there's, like a lobby or, like, a server browser or anything like that.
The reason I ask is because they recently added, like, a form of raid to Mortal Kombat of all games, where, like, where you and 2 other players take on, like, super overly powered fighters, and then if the 3 of you can take them down, like win a state, like, you know, one guy gets taken out and then the next person jumps in, but the bad guy's got like 700% health or whatever. But that has a very similar system where you click on the fight to start it, and then you get this like 400-second countdown, and if 2 other people don't join in those 400 seconds, it just boots you back to the menu. So I just thought maybe that was just
pretty damn similar.
and that's what I basically. So I've just basically thought, is this a problem with like any games that have raids in them? But you're saying no, they've usually just got better structured introductions to them, have they? Like lobby systems and stuff.
My
At
experience
least in MMOs, yeah.
Yeah, as I say, my experience with raids is mostly confined to MMOs where, they've basically perfected the lobby system waiting, letting you do other things while you wait for a raid.
Right.
Here, it just, your entire experience is paused. And it doesn't give me a lot of hope about, them extending the wild area to be like have an entire Pokemon game built around a wild area instead of routes, which is what a lot of people want. Just because it's just so bad. It's so poorly programmed. Yeah, and one of the big things about doing the raids is that you want to catch Gigantamax Pokemon, which when they Dynamax, they become different forms. So like a Butterfree becomes like this giant Mothra-like creature. It's really great. It's a wonderful spectacle. But I was just thinking, after I wrote my review, is it even worth it for me to catch this if there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to access that beautiful looking Mothra version of Butterfree in the next Pokemon game? Because they tend to introduce and then drop so many features from game to game that it's like, is this even worth the effort that it's taking me to catch it?
Sure. Okay, I hear you.
Yeah, and the more and more I played Shield, the more and more I kind of lost interest in Dynamaxing and Giganta, whatever the hell they're called.
Yeah.
And the more and more I'm like, this, it almost feels like kind of a step back even from Z moves and Meta Evolutions, because at least with those, you didn't have to like catch some specific type of Pokemon. Theoretically, you could just find the specific stone for the Pokemon you already have in your party that you raised from the get-go, as opposed to like catching, like for example, I have a Corviknight, and I got it all the way to the end game. It was like level 68 or something like that. But I wanted the giant version, the Giganta whatever the hell version. And then I had to catch like a separate Corviknight to get that. And it just felt a little weird to just like box this Pokemon I've been using since the start of the game in favor of like, yeah, but this one looks different when it gets big.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be, and like we said, it's just so frustrating to try and catch these ones because those are obviously going to be the most difficult to catch. And those are the only ones that have ever broken free from the Pokeball after I defeated them in a raid.
Which is really annoying.
Yeah. Because you
on the
have
plus
to...
side,
Go ahead.
You could save your game and then reload it, and the raid will still be there. That's what I've been abusing every time I run in one of those.
Yeah. See, I have zero patience for doing that. I'm not someone who's gonna save a game and then reload it just to get that. I will sooner not care. And it sucks because I generally do have fun with this game when I'm not interacting online. Like exploring the wild area, especially now that I've beaten the campaign and it's level 60 Pokemon are just roaming around waiting for me to kick their ass. There's a whole bunch of different weather systems in the wild area that bring out rare Pokemon that you don't usually see.
Yeah.
And camping, all of this stuff I enjoy. But soon I'm going to run out of stuff to do with that. And then it's only going to be the raids. And that's when I stop playing. That's when I'm done.
Yeah, and if you're playing like I was, and you're just trying to catch as many as you can, like I would basically get a badge, go back to the wild area, and try and catch as many new Pokemon as I can. Not just necessarily raids. I would like focus mostly on just finding Pokemon in the open area stuff. I would focus on raids last primarily. That stuff was pretty fun. And if you're like me though, and you did that throughout the entire game, even to the post game, there's not a lot left for you to do.
No, there is not. The only thing you can do is just start maxing them out to 100.
Yeah, and not to go into too many spoilers and like that, but the bad guys of the game, they kind of just show up at the very tail end. You beat them, and then they're gone. It's like, not even a joke, like maybe in the span of 15 minutes that the bad guys appear, and then you beat them, and then that's it. It's something.
Yeah. They don't hold a candle to N from Black and White. I think I still think that he is the pinnacle of bad guys in Pokemon games. But they're just so fucking lame and predictable too. You can tell from very beginning that these guys are going to be the villain. They're going to be the villains, and it's just you're just waiting to get that storyline over, only to realize, oh crap, that's the end of the game.
Yeah, I noticed like right after maybe the third badge or so, they just fucking beeline that story.
Yeah.
Also, I'm seeing a lot of Hop defenders on Twitter. I don't fucking get it. Hop was, man, I don't know. I don't like Hop.
Hop is what you stereotype your rivals to be in a Pokemon game if you have never played one, or if you've only played one. Like
Pretty much.
He is bare bones, and it's just like I don't know what went into the writing of this game and what went into crafting the storyline, and I don't know how much time they had to develop this from the end of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but it just it doesn't necessarily feel rushed. It definitely feels like first idea one. Like we write down an idea on the whiteboard and that's the one we're going with for basically everything in this game. Thankfully, there are a lot of really cool new Pokemon who I adore and treasure. Yapper, Poltegeist is wonderful. And apparently, as we learned this week, you can have a counterfeit version of Poltegeist depending on what kind of teapot you have it in. So that was fun to learn because I have a counterfeit one apparently. And I know there's a lot of debate. I stand by my assertion that the Grookey evolutionary line is the ugliest in the game. I know there are people who say that Scorbunny is the ugliest one. I like his, if only because I think we discussed this last week, they really dove into that soccer theme with him, with it. That it's a soccer fan, it's a soccer player, then it's a soccer pro who's bending it like Beckham with his big ball move. So fireball move. If there's anything that is absolutely stand out about this game, it's the new designs.
I thought some scenes would be voice acted, or like they come off like they would be voice acted. There's this one, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but there's this one specific gym leader. His whole gimmick is that he's like a musician, basically.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like he's singing, but if you have the sound on in this game, you just get like weird generic sounds and then a bunch of text at the bottom while like he's emoting singing. It looked so awkward and weird.
There is so my thing with Game Freak in this game is that I think they've kind of shown themselves to be a AA game developer that just happens to have access to a AAA franchise. Because everything that they do in this game with the no voice acting, actually just mostly the no voice acting, but with the graphics that aren't nearly up to scale with other games on the Nintendo Switch, they could get away with that on the 3DS because they're the big fish in the pond there. It's not the same anymore now that they're all on one system, that they are competing in a way with other Nintendo franchises. And I'm not gonna like get into the Dexit argument or the zoom in 400% to see this weird pixelated flower argument, but this game's gonna sell 15-20 million copies. Every Pokemon game, with the exception of a few, sells over 10 million copies. I feel that it's time that the production value for Pokemon games starts to match the popularity of it.
Yeah, so like where's that money going outside of like making bowler hat wearing plush Pikachus? Like
exactly.
Yeah.
They, the whole Dexa stuff, which I'll try not go into, but if they're gonna scale back the Pokemon, like the amount of Pokemon in the game, then the least they can do is try and bring an actual budget to the game.
I mean, if they could put voice acting in Zelda, which is the last series I thought I'd ever see it, and they can sure as hell put it in Pokemon. We know they have the money. They sold 6 million copies of this game in 2 days. Any final word on this, Dan?
No, Hop sucks. I'll stand by that. I see so many people defending Hop on Twitter being like, he has such a great arc and stuff. And I'm like, what?
No, he doesn't.
You beat him the entire game, and then he gets demotivated at the end of the game. And then the post-game, he just wanders around wondering what the hell to do. It's kind of sad.
By the way, remind me, in the older Pokemon games, didn't your rival always take the Pokemon that was strong against the one you took?
Yeah.
When did that change?
He also didn't fucking heal you every time he ran into you. Blue would just like come out of nowhere at the worst time imaginable. Be like, hey, fucko. and then stomp your Pokemon, not heal them at all. And you wouldn't get a rematch either. He would just go smell you later and then stroll along, and you'd end up at the Pokemon Center healing your Pokemon.
My favorite thing about Hop in this game is that when you team up with him, at a certain point, at least for my experience, he only used moves that would also damage his Pokemon. Like, his entire battle strategy was kamikaze.
Hell yeah.
And there was literally a match where he had his, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the evolved Wooloo, that he literally knocked it out himself because he used so many of the moves that hurt the sheep in addition to the Pokemon he was fighting. And then he brought in his Corviknight and did the same thing with him. It's just like, you're the worst fucking trainer in the history of this series, except for all of the NPCs that come into battle with me.
You are listening to Podtoid.
That is it for games, but we have some headlines to cover. It is time for the news. And we are getting closer to the end of the year, and without one more big game for release in 2019, pretty much everything now is turning towards Game of the Year talk, as well as Game of the Decade talk, because we're wrapping up this fucking awful decade in a few weeks. Of course, the big Game of the Year news this week was the announcement of the Game Award nominees. And this year's game to beat is apparently going to be Death Stranding, as it leads with 9 nominations, followed by Control with 8. We're not going to get into all the different categories, but here are a few choice few. For Game of the Year, it is Control, Death Stranding, Resident Evil 2, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and The Outer Worlds. For Best Narrative, it is A Plague Tale: Innocence, Control, Death Stranding, Disco Elysium, and The Outer Worlds. Best Performance, you have Ashley Birch for The Outer Worlds, Courtney Hope and Matthew Peretta for Control, Laura Bailey for Gears 5, and Mads Mikkelsen and Norman Reedus for Death Stranding. Best Independent Game, which is always my favorite category because that's where all my favorite games are, is a toss-up between Baba Is You, Disco Elysium, Katana Zero, Outer Wilds, and Untitled Goose Game. Best Family Game is 5 Nintendo titles, so they're going home with at least one award this year. And Best Fighting Game is between Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Samurai Showdown, Mortal Kombat 11, and 2 other games that were nominated to pad out the category. Just want to get your guys' thoughts on this year's nominations and award show. And Dan, let's go ahead and start with you.
It's sketchy as shit. Like, I'm not gonna go into like ethics, but because that conversation's impossible now. But boy, I wish it wasn't, because it's fucking weird and sketchy. Like, how did they possibly think giving Death Stranding that many nominations was a good idea, and wouldn't rile up people? Especially with the weird Famitsu situation going on there. Man, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the big elephant in the room for this year's award show is, it's Jeff Keighley's well-documented friendship with Hideo Kojima, as well as, the staff of Famitsu and Keighley both being added to Death Stranding, and Death Stranding subsequently being given a 40 out of 40 by Famitsu. You're right. I mean, Jeff Keighley, he did go out of his way. He talked to Polygon this week about his role in the Game Awards, and that he has no part in the nomination or voting process. It's all up to members of the press who are part of the voting committee,
which includes Famitsu, I believe.
Yes,
as
which
well.
does include
so
Famitsu.
It's just fucking weird.
But I mean, so he distances himself from it. But even if it sweeps, it's hard to shake that feeling of influence. And I believe him when he says he's not dipping his toes into the voting process. But I also think because he is so close buddy with many game developers, it's probably time, now that the Game Awards are more established, that it should no longer be a Jeff Keighley show. Because he is like just the sole operator of this entire process. And maybe because of something like this, it's now time to bring in other people in addition to Jeff.
Yeah, I agree. Because over the years, like year by year, step by step, the show has gotten better. It's gotten to the point where it's reaching that point of being, dare I say, respectable. But this just throws all of that out the window now, in my opinion. So
I don't think it throws it out the window, and also I kind of feel bad for Hideo Kojima because if it does sweep,
it's awkward. Yeah,
yeah, there's always going to be that. Did he really get it? Did he really deserve it? And
no, yeah,
that sucks because I know that Death Stranding is a divisive game.
Yeah, it's polarizing as hell, so it'd be extra weird if it won, and I'd feel extra bad because I think it's a great game, but that's just me. So,
Chris, what about you?
I don't know. I think CJ, you've kind of just vocalized how I feel about it. I just think it's odd, and I don't necessarily think there's any like fucking shenanigans going on or anything like that. But it does just like having it's the former Famitsu editor-in-chief, right? And he appears in the game and he makes a joke about, like, Sam, you're a great delivery guy. Maybe you'll end up in my Hall of Fame or something. And then the game does end up in the Famitsu Hall of Fame. And don't get me wrong, like, there's part of me that, like, when it comes to fucking the world at the moment, obviously you could say this about anything, but, like, I'm just fucking so much more concentrated on, like, actual politics, if you know what I mean, and so much more worried about that. But even on this level, whilst I don't think it's necessarily like quote unquote corrupt or anything, they should have fucking better known better. Like, it was obvious someone was going to raise this, basically. Like, everything's under a microscope now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it was obvious this was going to get raised. And to me, it kind of feels like something that should have just best been avoided altogether. Do you know what I mean? And
found some way to do it.
And as for the Game Awards itself, I do think it's a great show, but I kind of think it is just like, I think a lot of people are tuning in to see like adverts and reveals, if you know what I mean.
Pretty much.
And I think that's kind of I think a lot of people would be happy to just kind of log in the next day and just see the results in a list online. But it's because it has the reveals and the trailers that it has kind of the size. And it's a good show. I'm not knocking the show itself. Do you know what I mean? But I personally don't put that too much stock in like most award shows anyway. But as for what you're talking about, yeah, you kind of vocalized it. Maybe like people should not be appearing in video games if they also run what's considered the industry's premier video game awards event. But I don't necessarily think there's some chicanery going on. I just think it was a misplaced idea. You know what I mean?
These award shows tend to be a little masturbatory anyway, and I think that if I would love to see an award show that didn't have world reveal trailers and all that stuff, and kind of see how that does versus what it is now. Because I know when I watch it 2 reasons: one, to see the world premiere trailer stuff, and I like the live commenting on Destructoid. That's very fun for me. But I think it just kind of speaks to how far the gaming industry has to go in terms of presenting itself in on the same level of like what movies have with the Oscars or the Grammys, and even the people, you look at any comment section on the video game award shows, and people always, there's like an underlying current of eye rolling, even going to the Oscars and stuff. And I get that. I think that maybe those kind of award shows were a little bit more serious back in the day than they are now, or at least people took them more seriously. But yeah, I mean, what do y'all have said already? If when they want to be taken like this is a legit thing, don't nominate games that like the guy who is in charge of these is in, and he may not have a say in it, but then with the Famitsu thing, it you kind of go, okay, sure. Then we'll just keep watching for the game reveal trailers. Don't get rid of those, because otherwise no one's going to tune in.
It would be like if Destructoid nominated Retro City Rampage for Game of the Year, for its little Game of the Year awards, when 9 members of the staff are in it. Occams, you mentioned that you watch for the character or the trailer reveals and the Destructoid comments. I personally watch for all of the back and forth between the announcers because it's just so well written. I remember last year they had Ninja and Pepe from the Muppets making a fork knife joke. Oh man! How did that not win an Emmy?
Yeah, and didn't they have like some YouTube guy who just was like standing there because he missed his cue, and it goes back to that thing. It's still in its infancy. No matter how much money
Twitch streamer.
Yeah, sure, whatever. No matter how much money games make, like that forward facing view of it, just to sell to the general public. Games still come off as a thing for kids, it's interesting.
The one thing I will say, the best moment to come out of it is just knowing what type of comedian he is having Joel McHale announce Sonic Fox as the esports player of the year last year, just because that must have been so weird for him, given, when he hosted the last annual Spike video game awards, and he was just absolutely nonchalant about it and didn't seem to really give a fuck about getting there.
Yeah.
That he has to announce the furry to come win the fucking esports athlete.
I wish that they could have someone who actively hate, like there's a guy, there was an award show, I think the guy from Nope, I'll remember by the end of the podcast, but essentially it was
Happy
an actor.
Endings.
Was it that guy?
Yes.
Whose name I forget, and he just made fun of the entire process, which just made me so happy. Like, I wish they would do that.
That was the wasn't that like the influencer awards?
Yeah, it was the influencer award, and the guy's on a bunch of podcasts.
Adam
and
Pally.
Thank you very much. Yeah, watching him just make fun of everything and everyone there was beautiful, and I loved it. And I wish they would do that again for every iteration of the video games awards. Would be really pleasant.
Yeah. The only thing I want to add is that a few years ago I wrote an article about the chance that Japanese games have at the Game Awards. This was the year that Breath of the Wild did win, but I wrote about beforehand. It was nearly impossible for a Japanese game to win. It had to be the best of, like, one of the best games of all time in order to get that award. Because the only other Japanese game that had won at that time was Resident Evil 4, which is one of the greatest games of all time. Breath of the Wild, one of the greatest games of all time. And I mentioned that there was only 2 Japanese critics who were on the voting jury. I looked at the jury this year, and they are now up to 4. So, progress. Still a fraction of the U.S. and U.K. voters, but hey, it's a step in the right direction, considering 4 of the 6 nominees for Best Game are from Japan. Anyways, moving on to our second story. It's all about Half-Life. Turns out Valve is still interested in making video games, and this week it pulled back the curtain on Half-Life Alyx, which is an interquel set between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 that focuses on Alyx and her father's fight against the Combine. It's also a VR game, which they announced ahead of time before they revealed the trailer that it was going to be a VR project, but you still get the tinge of disappointment from people on it. If you own Valve Index, you will get the game for free, and I had to look up what Valve Index was because I don't know. And unlike a lot of other ambitious VR projects, it is not episodic. It's going to be a full game at launch and will cost $60 to non-Index VR players. The game is made using the Source 2 engine and will feature many of the staples of the Half-Life series. There is a trailer out. It's pretty good looking. That Source 2 engine can do some pretty goddamn amazing environments. But I can't see 3D, so VR is useless to me. So I want to know from the other can-use VR host of the show, what do you guys think of this project?
I saw the trailer earlier today. I actually think it looks pretty good if it runs, how the trailer depicts it running, because it makes it look like there's very little stumble fucking and falling about, and very much everything's like 1-1 perfect. And if it all plays out like that, that's great. I'm personally not interested. I'm not really interested in VR, and I'm not really interested in more Half-Life games, to be honest. That's sacrilege, I know, but I played the first 2 and I'm done. But I hope it comes out, and I hope that people enjoy it. The only kind of thing I take kind of a step back on is a lot of people are like, well, if this comes out and everyone buys it, then it will show them that, we really want Half-Life 3. They fucking know. They fucking know you do. So it's like, this isn't a testing the water thing. It's just like, they're just fucking putting it out. But it's not like, if this sells well, we'll do Half-Life 3. Because they already know everyone will buy Half-Life 3. They're just not making it.
Yeah, we need to sell our VR.
Yeah. It's not like let's test the water and see if the market's out there. They fucking know the market's out there. Do you know what I mean? But from a VR standpoint, it looks kind of cool. It looks kind of creepy as well. It's got all that body horror shit that franchise is good for. But in terms of picking items up and moving things out of the way, I'm surprised how good that trailer makes it look. It makes it look very smooth and very accurate. And yeah, and I hope it stands up to that. And if you're into VR, I hope this is a killer app for you.
Yeah, what Chris said. It looked. I watched the trailer today as well. Looks gorgeous. And it made me really want Half-Life 3. But it's there to sell a VR unit that people are still really on the fence on. I wear glasses, and I have yet to use a VR unit that accommodates my glasses. And I don't have those big dumb glasses your mom had in the 80s. I have like actual human being glasses because I'm not a fucking 20-year-old. So it's one of those things. It maybe I see a lot of people in the comments and just kind of reading online that be like, "Oh, this is awesome! I can't wait to watch a playthrough on YouTube." Take that as you will.
That's how I'm gonna have to experience it. So,
Half-Life is maybe my most favorite game of all time. On that note, I think if there is going to be a Half-Life 3, it will be for VR and nothing else. Because Valve don't need to make regular games anymore. They don't need to make games. Valve make fuck you money every single minute off Steam. So the only reason they're even making this is to push those VR headsets. And obviously, they're testing the waters and whatnot and to see if Half-Life is still viable and to get those headsets out there. But even if they do decide to go down the road of like, here's 3, I highly doubt it'll be just a regular game for regular game consoles and PCs. It'll be a VR thing. Because Valve are so dedicated to bringing VR to the mainstream, basically. And not only that, but they've spoken about this before, where they have gone back to the well on Half-Life, or this idea of a new Half-Life, so many times that they're at the point now where they have said themselves that they will only do it if it will revolutionize the industry, or it'll be some big game changer. Because as Ken Levine said, pretty much every first-person shooter has been a reskin of Half-Life, essentially. Up until, I guess, Doom, I would say. I feel like Half-Life Alyx is finally that killer app for VR that it's needed. And I wish I wasn't broke, because I really want to play it. I think it looks really interesting, and considering Valve time and time again have said we'll only do a Half-Life if we know it'll revolutionize things, then yeah, because Half-Life 1, in terms of storytelling and gameplay, really shook things up. Half-Life 2, in terms of technology, really shook things up. And I think Half-Life Alyx will be the defining VR game for a long while. So, at least from what I've seen in that trailer, because it looks damn impressive. So,
it does. It really does.
You see, it's like I do like the look of it, and I want to be on board. But like, I think the distance between me and VR always comes down to the fact that if I'm not standing in a fiberglass tree trunk and paying like £20 for 5 minutes, and the headset isn't giving me permanent spinal injury, then it's just not the VR that I grew up with. Yeah. I want to fight a pterodactyl against a completely black background, and I want to pay £25 for the privilege of doing it.
Hell yeah.
And it doesn't matter that it controlled poorly, or that no one knew what they were doing, or that the games were terrible. If it doesn't say virtuality on the headset, then fuck
it. You are listening to Podtoid.
All right, we are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, we have a community shout out.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Sorry. Let me. I have a cat laying on my lap and getting my phone up, and I'm just gonna some banter here, banter. Okay, yeah. So I'm looking at the community blogs, and Tater Chimp, longtime user Tater Chimp, put up a 2019 games played in life blog, and it's very long and detailed, and he's had a rough year, but he tells it in a way that really kind of takes you there, and it just sort of it for me. I'm giving this one a shout out because while it can be kind of a difficult read because the guy's had a rough year, it just kind of shows you what the community can be when they share with everybody. So to me, it's sort of like I'm experiencing his life and he's talking about games, and it just makes me remember and appreciate how that behind every screen name there's a person, and we are all very lucky and honored when they decide to share their life with us. And it really makes this here e-house and e-home. So go read Tater Chimp's blog and leave a comment, give him some love, and it's a good one. So shout out to you, Tater Chimp.
That was lovely, Occams.
Thank you.
All right, that is it, folks. On behalf of Dan, Chris, Occams, and myself, thank you for listening to Podtoid, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and the Destructoid YouTube channel.